Welcome back to the Chelsea Roar, fellow Blues fans, with me, your host, Ian the Dynamo Kelly, and as you can see, my beautiful mug for all my London Blue mates, and joined once again, as always these days, by my, may as well be call you co-host at this stage on the Chelsea Roar, Niall Hogan. How are you, Niall?
Good, not bad at all. Someone who certainly is not a blue.
Someone who's not a blue, but definitely is a football fan first and foremost, and always has an open mind. Some of the feedback you've been getting from some of our Chelsea fans has been great, and they definitely appreciate you on the show and like your kind of a straight down the middle attitude.
Yeah, absolutely.
I suppose today we can only talk about one thing really, and that's the upcoming fixture between Chelsea and Arsenal. And I suppose we should, rather than just talk about the fixture first, we should talk about obviously opening day of the season. Last week Chelsea got off to a flying start, obviously clean sheet, 3-0 win against Crystal Palace. Could have been tricky opponents, you know, with fans back in the stadium. Patrick Vieira's first game in charge. One of those teams that could have just, well, they did sit back, to be fair, but looking for that counter-attack break. And I know Palace last year, albeit under a different manager with a different set of tactics, could have caused problems. What was your thoughts on that, Niall?
The only thing I was worried about going into it was whether Chelsea would be lethargic after a tough Super Cup. That's the only thing that really worried me. I mean, in terms of talent, is are head and shoulders above them, without a shadow of a doubt. You know what I mean? And it's going to be a baptism of fire for Patrick Vieira anyway, because going back in there managing the London side, Crystal Palace, you know, they're kind of that team that the odd time gets a real good performance and causes an upset, but more often than not, they're really just making up the numbers. And they tend to skirt between that kind of like middle-ish to bottom kind of area. A number of times they've gotten out with the skin of their teeth. And this could be a dangerous season for them now. You know, got off to a bad start. Obviously a tough fixture against Chelsea. But Chelsea just went out there and did the business as they usually do. And what you would expect nothing less from Chelsea, you know what I mean? So it was all good.
And I know, obviously, on the for anyone, by the way, Dynamo Podcast Network, of course, as always. Niall runs all the football content on. He's a hand in all the football content on this network, and even in this one, he's got his finger in all the pies. But of course, Niall has the upper tier podcast, which is exclusive, of course, to the Dynamo Podcast Network, and he runs the football transfer show. You're doing your own little shows now. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing so that fans of football in general will be able to go and watch it?
Yeah, well, we do the Shankly Sessions, obviously the Liverpool podcast. Myself and Dean do that at the weekends, which is pretty cool and exciting, you know. And then we also do the transfer show that you mentioned. We do that on a weekly basis. That goes out looking at all the transfers across the spectrum, really. And then we've just kind of introduced a new show there today called Beat the Bookie, which is where we take a look at some nice little tips and bets for the weekend, try and get our viewers a few quid back. It's a short little show, less than 10 minutes. We get guys to send in their tips and stuff like that, and any kind of, you know, nice little bets that we wouldn't have seen or we might not see. They send them in, we discuss them on the show. It's a solo show, so we just have a chat about them, and it's just kind of a fun show. We don't want anyone speculating too much money. It's just to have an interest and a bit of fun and betting. As always, we say to people, don't gamble with money you're not willing to lose. Always be responsible. But yeah, just kind of a short solo fun show where people can have a bit of fun speculating, and then of course at the back end of the weekend, if these bets all fall on their backside, we can create a bit of banter in the comment section and stuff like that. So yeah, just a fun show. So it started off this week, bit of fun, probably on the back of last week. Last week we had a good start where I got one up last week, 140 quid for a tenner, and I was thinking, you know something, I should be sharing some of this with our viewers. So it was just an idea that came to me the other day, and I said, yeah, let's do a show, Beat the Bookie, put it out on a Friday night, so everyone going home from work, they've done their long week's work. If you're a football fan, all you're thinking about is a few beers and a few betting slips, a coupon, and a bit of crack for the weekend. So
absolutely, cool. Get your favourite Chelsea glass or your favorite football team's glass and go over and check it out. It's fun, you know what I mean? And that's what gambling's meant to be too. It's meant to be fun. So we keep it light here on the Dynamo Podcast Network. So go and check those shows out. They're great. There's a lot of effort put into them, and to be honest with you, there's a lot of entertainment in them too.
And for your Chelsea fans, there's some real cool Chelsea picks on this week's show.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, and this is what we're going to go to. Obviously, just sticking on last week's game. Obviously, going back to it, I know you and the boys kind of made a big deal out of Timo not scoring a goal and whatnot. But again, a very, very hard working, good performance from Timo. He really does know how to drag defenders, out of position. It's one thing that myself and a lot of Chelsea fans have noticed, and we saw it in the Champions League final in the most important game of our season last year. Which, I am not of the mindset that he won't try that a lot with Lukaku this year. I think that is going to happen a lot this year. What way he plays it with Havertz, because I do honestly, I agree with you and the boys on the Monday mashup in that I think Kai Havertz is going to have a major, major breakout season this year. So it's going to be interesting to see what way he does that. With Timo playing off and maybe with the two up front, it could be a 4-2-4 at times is what I'm thinking, and with Havertz kind of floating around in the free role kind of area, and obviously Mason Mount is that kind of midfielder that can play wherever you want him to play, to be fair. But interesting. I think looking at the game as well, kind of almost, it's amazing how two players in particular have stood out to me under Thomas Tuchel that look like they've just went back 2 years on their age. And that's Marcos Alonso and Cesar Azpilicueta. I mean, their pace is back. It looks like their arms, just those veins bulging out of their arms. Like, obviously the fitness regime, not too dissimilar to when Klopp went in there. The Germans are meticulous, aren't they?
Yeah, and absolutely.
The fitness levels, crazy.
Yeah, I just think Alonso was kind of a weird one, isn't he? Because Tuchel came in and he kind of liked him, and then he kind of fell out with him.
Yeah.
And now he's back liking him again. So it's kind of, I suppose it's, in terms of Tuchel, it's good to see that he has a side of him that says, look, no one's really out of the picture and everyone still has a chance to prove themselves. But Alonso, I've always been a fan of Alonso anyway. I think he's a very good footballer. Highest
scoring defender in the last, I think, what was it, 22 goals or something? He's the highest scoring defender in the Premier League since he's come into it or something. Mad stats like.
Yeah, he's an outstanding player. And of course, Cesar, you obviously can't say enough about him. I mean, he just keeps on turning back the clock and he just keeps on finding a new way to play. And it's like he nearly develops a new position that hasn't been seen in football before.
Yeah.
And he just rises to the cause all the time. And he's just you look at him again, in terms of stature, you wouldn't think much about him, but he's an absolute warrior on the pitch as well. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, he doesn't give an inch, and it's great to see it even at that age and to be that ambitious still, to want it so
he much. He has that Chelsea mentality, doesn't he? He plays that Chelsea way. Yeah. For people that don't understand it, unless you're a Chelsea fan or like a proper football fan and understands the club, there's a Chelsea way. Most clubs will say that there's a way, there's a Liverpool way, there's a United way. But I think there's a Chelsea way, and we've seen it with all the foreign players that have come in over the years, the likes of Di Matteo, Gus Poyet, Zola, Vialli. They all just kind of end up molding into that.
Yeah.
Kind of, they become geezers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they become Chelsea boys, even though they're not Londoners. But I think with Cesar, he's kind of like, if Carvalho and John Terry had a baby, you would get Cesar Azpilicueta. That's how I kind of describe
he's
it.
He's the love child, definitely.
Yeah, because he has qualities from both of them.
Yeah,
that he meshes together in his own play and stuff like that. So, outstanding player, I mean, you rarely see him getting caught,
And Chelsea captain, rightly so. Before we get into this weekend's game, one player in particular that is on the lips of a lot of people because he's up there for the Ballon d'Or and one of the favourites at this point, and we've mentioned it on previous shows, is Jorginho. I know Kante is there as well, but we talked about Jorginho possibly because he won the Euros with Italy. He had an outstanding performance, didn't he, against Palace? I mean, the transformation. We're having an Arsenal fan coming in here soon, of course. One Morris Shorthall of the of GP podcast as well, so he's coming in now in a moment. But One of the things that I have to say that stands out for me with Jorginho is since Tuchel's come in, his work ethic, his work rate is absolutely phenomenal, isn't it? Like, I mean, his tracking back, his passing ability, his understanding of the game, his reading of the game is just absolutely second to none at the moment.
Well, it's probably the demands of the manager that's in there at the moment in terms of his own vein, in terms of work rate. He's not going to settle for anything less than an absolute 100% for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think with Jorginho, I was saying on Twitter today with Jorginho in terms of when he was nominated for that European player, and some guy listed off about 30 midfielders that he would give it to before him. And the interesting thing was, apart from Kante, none of those other midfielders have won the Euros plus the Champions League and got to the final of the FA Cup. And I was just thinking, like the hate is real, really real.
Yeah, very underappreciated player, but only I think from the outside in. It's kind of one of those things of jealousy is envy.
Yeah, the problem is it's so difficult to give a guy like that the award because he's like sort of like, like Makelele, where he used to just get on with his job, went under the radar, always gave you like an 8 or 9 out of 10, but never needed to be spoken about because just went about his business. And it's only afterwards when you look back on those type of players in their careers that you realise how brilliant they were. And Jorginho's that type of guy as well, because he's not a guy that's generally in the spotlight and stuff like that. He just does his job. Yeah. And he does his job really, really well.
I think a lot of people, a lot of Real Madrid fans are actually campaigning for him to be the Ballon d'Or, obviously, because they said Luka Modric obviously got it as well. And I think Jorginho has that kind of mix of like a Fabregas and Makelele type player meshed into one. Do you know what I mean? He's not your Kante where he's just an engine, but he's a little bit more silky. You know what I mean? In terms of he dictates the play. But look, we'll park that here and we'll welcome our guest for today, and we'll get on to the main event. Of course, Maurice Shorthall of Cheapy Podcast is here with us. He is an Arsenal fan, and we are going to be talking all things Arsenal-Chelsea for the next 20 minutes. Maurice, welcome to the show, my brother.
How are you, gentlemen?
Very well. Very, very well. Maurice, we'll start with you. So this weekend, obviously, bad start to the Premier League for you guys last weekend against away to Brentford, albeit. Big game this coming Sunday, and I mean, we've talked. I saw a bit of Arsene Wenger and a bit of Alex Ferguson in Arteta the other day, saying that they had too many players out with COVID and the game shouldn't have went ahead and all. So is there cracks beginning to show in the personality or?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know why they didn't announce that the players had COVID, because that seems to be the thing. So
yeah,
I think for the whole week then there was rumors of, did he have a fallout with people or what happened? So I don't know what way it was managed, or people were saying he could have been trying to protect some players' privacy medically or something like that, but it didn't do them any favors. But what you seen last week was just the kind of the same old Arsenal, if you just get out of them, you bully them, throw long balls into the box. Like Andy Carroll's been doing it to Arsenal for years, Didier Drogba, any kind of physical player in the box against Arsenal historically, and they struggle. So that's what Brentford done their homework. Wasn't really surprising, I don't think, to anyone what happened last week.
So in saying that, the re-debut of one Romelu Lukaku is going to happen on Sunday. Yep. So speaking of physical players, Niall, talk to me. I mean, this is Romelu Lukaku is probably your favorite striker in the world right now at the moment.
Yeah, I kind of I don't know what way to sort of word it. I kind of fear for Arsenal this weekend again, and I wonder, is this Tuchel going to put maybe the first or second nail into the coffin of Arteta? Because I don't think he's going to have a lot of mileage there if things go south against Chelsea. But it'd be the very Arsenal thing to do, wouldn't it, to like lose to Brentford and then rock up and get some sort of a result against Chelsea?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. We've seen it last season as well, where they'd go out and be so poor against teams, and the next thing they play, one of the top six, and they get a result. You know what I mean? And it's just so strange. But with Lukaku coming in there this weekend, the wave of that coming in, the talent that's already there, And, you know, I presume if the boys were out for COVID, I presume they're still going to be out. If they're not going to be out, I'm sure they're still going to be feeling some symptoms and stuff like that. We seen it last year with Havertz when he had COVID. It took him months to get over it in terms of that long COVID stuff and things like that. And then the thing about it is, when you look at Arsenal, and it saddens me a little bit because I've often said to people, and I've spoke to Morris about it before as well, if I didn't follow Liverpool, I would follow Arsenal. I always loved Arsenal's brand of football. I always appreciated what Wenger did and George Graham and stuff like that. But the foundation of Arsenal Football Club has always been built on solid defences and outstanding goalkeepers.
I would agree with that in terms of, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, and that's a real problem going forward for Arsenal, because if you look at the amount of players that Arsenal still need to get in, and you look at the money that they have spent and where they have spent it, is really, really, really concerning. I mean, to be thrown 30 million at Ramsdale, to be thrown similar money, I presume, at Odegaard, you know, and the problems that they have up front. Lacazette tends to not fire the way he should. Partey has been indifferent when he came in. We know he can be outstanding, but trying to keep him fit. Similar problems that we have ourselves with Keita at Liverpool, trying to keep the player fit. We know he's outstanding. But, you know, that all being said, I wonder from a Chelsea point of view in this match at the weekend, even if Lacazette and Aubameyang are in the team, would you be any more worried? I'm not too sure whether you would or not.
That's a question, and obviously updated team news. Christian Pulisic won't play, obviously, because he's tested positive for COVID. But good news, I suppose, for Blues fans is that Kante and Ziyech are back, and it's good to see Ziyech back because he's obviously had a stormer of a preseason. And we saw the shoulder injury. We weren't too sure how bad that was going to be, so they're going to at least be in the squad. I suppose, Morris, how worried would you be now with looking at a possible front line of, you know, Lukaku, Werner? I mean, those two, you could see in the open training session there with Chelsea that they'd done during the week, they had a lot of Werner and Lukaku together. So obviously this is something that Tuchel is looking at here that can possibly get the best out of Timo Werner. And it's kind of almost like the magician trick, isn't it? Okay, look at what the right hand's doing, being Romelu Lukaku. Don't look at what the left hand's doing, because all of a sudden Timo Werner could either, you know, form an unbelievable partnership with him like Lautaro did, or it'll fall on its face. But then as a backup, you've got Kai Havertz then in there too. So what are you thinking?
Well, last season we had a preview show, remember, just before St. Stephen's Day, and Arsenal were absolutely shite going into it.
And you won.
Yeah, and then we said, like, we all said that Chelsea would win. Now, I know it was different back then, and Frank was kind of, you know, maybe a bit more inconsistent than this manager shown so far. But, you know, I don't expect Arsenal to win, but at the same time, it wouldn't overly surprise me if they did, you know, maybe by a penalty or something, maybe fluky. I don't know. I think
I'm with you. You.
I think they'll switch back to a back 3-5, you know, and I'd say it'll be Gabriel, Holding, and White, maybe 2 wing backs. Then it could be Chambers and Tierney. I don't know. They'll have to try and nullify what Chelsea have going forward. So I'd say it'll be more of a defensive approach. Whether they can hold them out, I don't know. I really don't. You just don't know with Arsenal. I couldn't say. You don't know who's going to show up.
I think Niall always likes to bring up the point, and so do I, because I think the games really generally are won and lost within the midfield. You know what I mean? It depends on what midfielders are going to show up on the day. And I mean, I'm looking at Kovacic and Jorginho, who, you know, we gave Jorginho a love in there earlier on. Kovacic is just a fantastic baller, you know, all throughout, no matter what. He's just a fantastic player on the ball. Jorginho, he can dictate, you know, the tempo of a game. And obviously then you've got Mason Mount come back in, who didn't even, it's frightening when you think of what Chelsea have at the moment. And obviously I'm a little bit biased, but it is frightening when you think of what they have on the bench. It's like you've got one world-class player, you know, to come on and replace another. I think the midfield battle will be a huge one, obviously, this week. And obviously it's at the Emirates, so Lukaku is gonna really want to come out here and put in a shift, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I think this game might not be won in midfield. I think it'll be won with maybe how poor or how good Arsenal can defend, because I think that's going to be the key this weekend.
You think, Niall, that it might be one of those things that if Chelsea get an early goal, then that could really be where you see the floodgates open and then they draw Arsenal out. Whereas I'm thinking that if Arsenal, the longer it goes before Chelsea get a goal, they'll gain confidence from that. Do you think that might be the case, or no?
No. I think what'll happen is I could see Arsenal sitting in similar to way like a Burnley would play with 2 banks of 4, and they'll try and hold off Chelsea as long as they can. And if Chelsea do happen to get an early goal, I think Arsenal will remain the same, and they will hope that, like, from maybe 60 minutes on, 65 minutes on, that they might be able to spring a goal from a set piece or a penalty or a breakaway or something like that. But I could see this. I could see, probably from the first time I can remember, in terms of me ever watching Arsenal stuff like that, Arsenal trying to play some sort of a low block against Chelsea. That's the way I would say it, because to be honest with you, if Chelsea do get an early goal and they draw Arsenal out because of that early goal, you could see Chelsea thumping them 4 or 5-0, because just that constant. I think if they get in behind that front four, if you like, in terms of Arsenal's midfield, the likes of Xhaka and that having to play that kind of defensive role, I think if they get in behind that, I think the 4 that are at the back are very, very suspect against the skill and the nous of Chelsea. And we all know Leno was a bit sort of shaky at the moment as well. His confidence wouldn't be great. They're bringing in Ramsdale. That ain't going to do anything for him either. That's only going to make him worse, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just think that's what I would fear. But I could see this being, when one of the top 4 teams come up against the likes of a Burnley or a well-organised Brighton or something like that, where they put those banks in there and they sit in for a while to hold on, and then they come out and start to play. It's really, for me, you're not going to have the effect of Lampard there, where Arsenal kind of caught them cold that time and stuff like that. This is Tuchel. He can't afford to be dropping points at this stage, because I really believe the points that the teams drop against the traditional top 4 or top 6 is what could cost the team the league. I don't think it's going to be, you're not going to see a lot of those, the likes of our Chelsea, City, ourselves and United. We're not really going to be dropping points against the lesser teams this year, because we're head and shoulders above them. And with fans back in the stadium and stuff like that, those lesser teams, they're not going to get away with what they got away with last year. They just will not get away with it. It's not an even playing field anymore. And I would think if you're dropping points at this early stage, I mentioned it last week about City dropping points like that to Spurs, they're very hard points to get back in the title race. And it's not going to be where you're going to be 10, 12 points behind and you're going to be able to recover that. That ain't going to happen this year.
Yeah, interesting to look at it like that. I mean, I look at Arsenal kind of obviously missed out on our own Tammy Abraham. I know there was interest in Zuma as well. I know I'm pretty sure that there's still interest in Zuma. I think Chelsea, historically speaking, would probably rather sell someone like a Zuma to an Arsenal than Tottenham. I just don't think they'll do business with Tottenham at all, personally. I don't think they'd even swap a shirt with Tottenham, to be fair, purely because of Daniel Levy's past, ignorance on even having a chat about a player. Someone like that, Morris, do you think that's something you would need, or would you agree with, the Jamie Carragher outburst last week that enough Chelsea rejects? Do you think that Zoom is a young enough player that is obviously a fantastic player in his own right, but do you think that's what you need? Or do you think Zuma, if you're bringing him in, you need someone that's actually capable of, being able to captain and shepherd that back line?
Yeah, I'd say there's kind of a lack of leaders there, but now I think the excuses now are up for anyone that's defending the manager, things like that. You can see now, as of today, they've spent more money than anyone else in the league.
Sure.
And they've still not managed, I don't think, to actually improve the squad. So it's crazy. Guys like Ramsdale, we've got a poor keeper in Leno, now another one in Ramsdale, or the guy we got, Runnerson from Iceland. He's a shit keeper as well. Ben White, I think Ben White is a decent player, but I think he'll actually be more exposed at Arsenal than he was at Brighton, if that makes sense, because they're so poor defensively. So he's going to be made look worse probably than he actually is. But if we had someone captain material like in fairness to the way Maguire has gone into Man United, you can say what you want about him. Like he does have a presence. He is a leader there.
Yeah, I'd
And,
agree.
and I think with Varane going in there, I think they'll be a pretty solid duo this year. If we got someone experienced, like David Luiz got on pretty well at Arsenal from a leadership point of view. And he was there and he was kind of seen as someone to look up to. Like, obviously, he's very erratic, as you know, as well, Ian, and he's coming kind of to the end of his career. So that didn't work out. But there's not too many top quality centre backs out there. And it'd want to be a really good one to try and string this back four or back five or whatever way it is together.
Yeah. What about, I suppose, in the next couple of minutes, we're kind of stuck for time here, but why don't we start with predictions? We'll start with you, Morris, actually, on your prediction, score, and how you think the game will go.
It's really hard to call. It depends on, if Lukaku is on fire and he's straight into the team. I don't know. I could see if Chelsea score first, I could see them winning maybe by 2 or 3 at least. But as you said, the longer the game goes on, I would say, Arsenal could draw, maybe nick a win. I'm going to say 3-1 to Chelsea.
Fair, honest prediction. What about you, Noel?
I suppose if I didn't stay with my commitments on my other shows, I'm thinking somewhere in the region of either 4-0 or 4-1 to Chelsea. I think Lukaku could pick up the match day ball on Sunday. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I think you're probably looking for the other goal, maybe Kai Havertz. I'm just like, as you know, I'm just not convinced on Timo Werner. I don't know whether Lukaku will be that generous.
It's a jealousy thing that you just didn't get him. I understand it.
I don't think it is. I just think it's just, I think a lot of Chelsea fans are defending him at the moment, as you said earlier in the show, about his movement and the other stuff he does. And I think all that stuff he does really, really well. But I don't think he was bought to create space and create movement. I think he was bought to score goals.
But also, we have to remember, Didier Drogba came in and it took him 3 seasons to hit the ground running. We're very ignorant as football fans now, I think, and we expect him to do it today or not at all. And that's it. And then you get rid of a £50 million player, and then all of a sudden he goes elsewhere and then bangs them in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think Lukaku is your Didier Drogba, though.
I understand that, but I definitely think Timo has a lot to offer, and I think you're predicting 4-5-0. I'm gonna go ahead.
No, that's what I'm in around that. But Arsenal might ping a goal back. I don't know. It depends on the lineup.
I'm gonna not be too cocky. I'm gonna not be too cocky, and I predict a goal for Timo. I do actually predict a goal for Timo. And I think you're going to see a brace from Big Rom. 3-1. I'm going to say 3-1, which is fair. I'm going to stick with Morris. I don't want to be too cocky.
Yeah.
3-1 is my prediction. And I think if Timo scores, that stops the conversation for a week at least. If Timo hits the bar about 3 or 4 times, then we know that someone's put a hex on the poor fucking kid, because Niall, I think, is the one that done it. Because how many times did he hit the bar in all competitions last year? I think it was 20 something. But yeah, he still had 20 odd assists and goals, all together.
Someone measure those goals.
Quick. Christ, it's mental, isn't it?
He's not clinical. I think that's what Niall's pretty much saying, isn't it?
But yet he was so clinical in the Bundesliga. It's crazy,
That's what we got to see with this Sancho guy this year. Is he going to be the real deal at United? I don't know.
You never know. Next summer, Morris, you might pick up Timo Werner cheap off Chelsea. Who knows? Never know what might happen there. Can you imagine?
We weren't willing to do business with Arsenal with Tammy. It was like as soon as Jose came in, we were like, right, there's a lad who builds bastard strikers. You know what I mean? There's a lad who builds that tuggery of strikers. Is like, get him on a program for a year or two with Jose Mourinho playing in Italy, put some weight on him. That buyback clause was genius. He could come back and be young Rom.
I'd take Calvert-Lewin at Arsenal in the morning. Something different, someone physical up there,
Yeah.
Something like that.
But look, so
Benitez will probably sell him to you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, he likes doing things like that.
The Rowan Everton project has begun.
Yeah.
He tried it with us, didn't work. But well, look, lads, I really appreciate you taking the time out. Nice short show just to give you our Arsenal versus Chelsea preview. Morris, I know you're busy. Do you want to plug anything there before you go? Tell people what you got coming up on GP.
Just the usual stuff. I don't really have. I'm up the wall at the moment, just trying to record stuff. So the usual kind of crack.
I'm very excited about some of the guests coming up now. Some of them are lads that I watch on telly and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like every day, you're kind of fucking looking at your email and you're hoping. I'm just sending away mad emails and just hoping for the best, really.
You're also landing mad guests, so it's not too bad. You're doing the biz.
You're throwing enough shit at the wall, hoping it'll stick, and at the moment, it looks like it's sticking. So, fair play to you. Well, look, we're going to wrap it up there now. And thanks for listening. I have been your host, Ian the Dynamo Kelly. This has been the Chelsea Roar. And until next week, go Blues.